Hi folks, we already talked about OSI model, and now it's not OSI layer 2, but we are going to talk about OSI layer and OSI model layers, and this is a lecture 2. So let's start. Beginning at the bottom of the OSI model layer 1, we do call this physical layer. Now the physical layer is responsible for the definition of electrical, mechanical, procedural and functional specifications that are used to activate the link, to maintain the link, to deactivate the link when communication is finished. So the type of things that you are going to see here or the physical layer will be things like physical data rates and maximum transmission distance. Because of the type of transmission we are doing. So sort of law of physical playing a part here. Other attribute would be voltage or the timing of voltage levels, things along those lines. Now, when we think about the physical layer that we have to imagine is we have physical devices, but there are certain things we can't see here. Obviously, like the voltage, but we might be dealing with physical media that might be Ethernet cable, something tangible, something physical that reside at layer 1 of the OSI model. So okay, so that's what we see at layer 2, layer 1. We see the physical media and all of the properties that surround it. Moving on to layer 2, we call this our data link layer. Now the data link layer is what defines how my data is going to be formatted for transmission. It also defines how we are going to access that physical layer. And so the physical layer, we could have different type of media. For example, your media might be Ethernet, or it can be fiber optic cable or some wireless communication. Whatever the case may be, we need to have a definition of how we are going to access that, and that is what layer 2 is responsible for. Now layer 2 also makes sure that we have a reliable data delivery of data. Now it doesn't do any error correction, but it will also do some detection. Let me know if something didn't work right. Now as far as device go, we do have physical devices that are designed to operate at layer 2. Those might be bridges, those might be switches, and these are layer 2 switches. Moving up to the next layer, that is called network layer or layer 3. Now the network layer is designed to provide connectivity between two systems that are on different network. And the way that we do this is through a logical addressing. The most common logical addressing that we deal is called IP version 4 or IP version 6. So I am giving you one more tip. There must be, if there is IP version 4 and 6, there might be IP version 1, 2, 3, and there might be IP version 5. You have to Google it and you will be surprised to see the history. Now there are logical addressing layer 3 used to determine best path. The best path calculate is done through a routing protocol in most cases, though it could be done statically by an administrator, statically or mathematically. Statically is much better. Now best path is selected and our data is transmitted. And remember that each layer provides service to the layer above. So when layer 3 figure out the best path, it is going to take that information that it wants to send to a next hop device, and it is going to pass it down to layer 2. Help me to access the physical layer. So now we have a layer 3 devices. That an example of layer 3 devices might be switch, and that would be also a router. It is commonly said that router operate at layer 3. and some switches nowadays also operate on layer 3. The next layer in the 7 layer OSI model is transport layer or layer 4. The transport layer is responsible for segmentation of my data. Segmentation of my data and reassembling that data when it is received on the other end. So an example would be a large corporation. You want to transfer file from one location to another location, and if that has to be done reliably because the data is important, well, the transport layer has a service called the TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, that can do for us. It is not every case that traffic need to be sent reliably, and Layer 4 has a method of transport that can send traffic unreliably, and that is called User Datagram Protocol or UDP. Now, just because it is said to be an unreliable protocol, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that it is using the service without any acknowledgement of the receipt of data. And by the way, UDP is the size of UDP is smaller and is more faster than TCP. The transport layer has provided the detection and recovery. It does flow control, and that is all used in our reliable connection. Layer 5 is the session layer, and the session layer is data. The session layer is a layer that establish, manage, and terminate session between two hosts that want to communicate with one another. The session layer also does synchronization between the presentation layer of the two host devices. The presentation layer sits between the session layer at layer 6. Now again, this would be service that session layer has provided for layer 6. So an example would be web server that a number of users. The presentation layer sits above the session layer, as I said. So an example would be a web server that has a number of users and that are communicating to processing that are running on the server, and that can be communicating with those processes at any given time. Something has to keep track of which user communicate with which process, and that's what this session layer help us to do. As we can see here, if we put just some computer here, some web server, and these hosts are going to talk with them, and then this session layer help us to manage which process belong to which session. Moving up another layer, or layer 6, the presentation layer. That is the layer that deals with how the information that is sent up at the application layer is going to be readable by the application layer at the other end. So it is all about how the data is presented for readability. So an example here would be some program that communicate with another computer. One is using EBCDIC or EBCDIC, and the other is using ASCII text to represent the same character. Now these are two different formats, but each of them are representing the same character. They just do in a different way. So the presentation layer would have to translate between these data formats using a common format. Finally, we are coming to the application layer, that is called 7 layer. Now the application layer that is closest to the user. This layer is something that user network. This layer is something that user network services to provide a service to an application. So there are applications that do not have the TCP/IP stack, or more specifically that do not use the OSI model because they don't communicate on the network. But if an application is going to communicate on the network, that is going to have to use the application layer to start to pass its traffic through this 7 layer model, and then down to the wire of data transfer. So in reality, the application layer is not providing service to another OSI layer, but rather it is providing services to an application that sits outside this OSI model. Now the application is going to establish the availability of different communication partner, and it is going to synchronize the establishment agreement. It will do some error recovery and control of my data integrity. But all in all, as a networking person, we generally don't work at the application layer or the presentation or even the session layer. For that matter, as a security analyst, you don't need to be a little more aware of what's happening at layer 7, especially when we start to analyze data. We might see that certain attacks are injected at layer 7 and then making use of that OSI model. So I have to finish this OSI layer, and the next we are going to talk little bit more about OSI layer.